Wait, you said take a timeout? Timeouts? Are we really using timeouts? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, timeout? No. Let's talk about ways that we can discipline our children. And timeouts is something that some people use and some people don't use. But let's talk about the pros and cons around it. So stay tuned.
You don't want to miss it. You're listening to Marriage Mania, where we are audacious, sagacious, and tenacious for the Lord to uphold godly marriages and to raise fervent children who are countercultural and stand for biblical truth.
Welcome back. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Michael.
And hey, I want to talk about timeouts. Why do we use timeout? This countdown thing of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, out. Time out. Let's talk about why these techniques are used and the discipline techniques around that. But before we get started, please subscribe here. It helps us get the message out. We want to be able to reach as many families as possible for Jesus Christ. You can also find Bible studies at manageministry.com. We have Bible studies for husbands and wives. We have the covering, the role of a biblical husband, and we have the helper, the role of a biblical wife. It really helps to really hone in on what is the biblical role of a husband and a wife, and how do we do that biblically? So check those out on our website. So Michael, this whole timeout thing, we need to talk about it because this is a disciplinary technique that is used by many parents. And, do we use that? And why would we use it? And is this something that we've talked about in the past and what we've decided to do for our child? So I want to really have this conversation of like why timeout is something that people use.
Yeah. Well, yes. And this seems to be a favorite kind of correction for today. You hit your brother and caught the house on fire, you're going to time out. You hear comedians
in the corner, time out for 10 seconds,
yeah,
right?
Right. It's like this is the cardinal offense. It's like the kid's like, oh, time out. I can do this little
I can
time.
stand in the corner really quickly.
You hear comedians joking about teenagers being sent to their room where there's a TV and video games and such, and they're like, okay, whatever, I can do time out.
I'll be in time out a lot longer, right?
Right. But it is the next step on the disciplinary continuum. We talked before about our praise, presence, and our words. That's what we really want to have the bulk of our disciplinary method to be, to just kindly ask our child, will you please pick this up? Will you make sure you're back by 8:00? And they do it, and that's exactly what we're going for. But if the only way that'll happen is if our words mean something, that if our words are ignored, there's a next step. And what is that next step going to be? And the very next step is usually some kind of timeout. And this is for all ages. I mean, you can send a teenager to their room and out of your presence.
It doesn't necessarily have to be like you're in timeout as a teenager, right?
Right.
It's
yeah,
like
you use different language and such, and you do it differently. But things blow up with your teenager. It's like, hey, we need a break from each other. You go to your room, and let's let things calm down for a time. Or sometimes you can be grounded in a sense from going out. In a sense, that's kind of a timeout. So it's a favorite kind of correction for today. And, children don't like to be removed from what they're doing and placed in solitary confinement. So
that's what they feel, right? They feel like, oh my gosh, I'm away from my parents and I'm away from what's going on right now.
Right. And this is why some don't like this. There's some psychologists that don't like this, and some parents that don't want to give a timeout because you're isolating your child. You're putting them in solitary confinement, and they don't necessarily want to do that. But I know for us, I found them, especially for young children, as a very useful tool to just disengage a very volatile moment. And it can happen on both sides. We're losing a little bit of control. The child's not minding us. They're going crazy. The environment's overstimulating, and we're going crazy. It's like we need some disruption of what's going on. And the easiest way to do that is to send the child to their room and let the dust settle and calm down and get out of that overstimulating environment or whatever stimulus that's going on that's just causing everything to get worse. You got to break that up. And the easiest, and to me, the most kindest way to do that is simply time out. you go over here and go to a room that doesn't have all these toys necessarily, and so that they can just get away from that overstimulation. And once everything has calmed down, I'm going to go in there, and this is the most important step of any disciplinary method. We're going to talk about what just happened. Mm-hmm. And now we're calmed down so we can talk about that
and have that
conversation. Mostly is going to, I don't want to preach, because I don't want the child doesn't have the attention span to listen to this long drawn out conversation being preached at them. Best way is to, I think, ask questions. Jesus asked a lot, taught by asking questions.
I know, like that's something that we should do as parents, right? Like
it's very powerful. Get
asking questions
about
because
what they did. Yeah.
And Jesus was so good at that. It was like they asked a question and he asked the question back, and then he responded with a question. It's like
it gauges the mind, makes you think about, instead of just being preached at, to where you can just tune out. Did you listen to anything I said? What you were talking to me? I'm sorry, I totally tuned you out. But you can't tune out a question, because you realize that they'll be like, "What? Oh, were you not listening?" The question is, why did you think that was a helpful way to go about solving a problem, by hitting your brother? Was there another way that you could possibly have solved this issue? So questions definitely, that's a very important part of timeout. And timeouts allow things to calm down so you can have those very important talks about what happened, and always concluding with, is there anything you want to say to me? Yes, I'm sorry for talking back at you after I hit my brother. What else do you need to say? I'm sorry. Yeah. Will you forgive me? Yes. And then yes, I forgive you. And then there's hugs and kisses. I love you. This doesn't change how much I love you. And you need to go down and apologize to your brother or sister for what happened. That's the most important part of any consequence. And it's those consequences and timeouts that can be very useful in getting to that place. Without a timeout, I'm not quite sure how you get there. And I've seen a lot of parents ask the questions, okay, we're not supposed to give timeouts to a psychologist who's saying you shouldn't do that. It's like, how do I get them to stop hitting me? How do I get them to stop yelling at me? And I haven't really heard a really good answer about that, except, you got to separate them from that overstimulating environment.
I totally agree about the timeouts. I mean, I don't personally use like the timeout, like you're going in timeout right now because of this, but we use it in a way that it's like you were saying, okay, there's some behaviors that are happening. Maybe there's some frustration. Maybe one's tired and we're just not communicating well. So let's just take a quick break. And when I'm saying break, not a break from our child because we want to be away from them, but for them to take time to relax and think about everything. And then for me to actually take a breather because there's so many questions. And as an adult, I can't seem to handle it, handle all the questions and everything happening at one time. So I'm okay. Just let me have some time to think, and then you think, and then it seems to always work out. Like that little bit of time, it might be 5 minutes for us, but it just really restarts everything.
Yeah.
It resets. That's the word. Yes. It resets everything.
Yes. And it's worked very well for us to reset that, to get out of that overstimulating environment. That's called whatever interaction that's going on, to cause that to dissipate. So it doesn't spin out of control even worse. And there's a general rule that a child should be in timeout for 1 minute for every year of the child's age. So 1 minute for a 1-year-old and 2 minutes for a 2-year-old. And, and we always say, like, go with that if that works for you. But I know for us, that never seemed to be near enough time, because I always just went by waiting until they had calmed down enough for us to have that very beneficial talk. And it always took more than a minute for a 1-year-old. That wasn't anywhere near enough time for them to reset so that we could talk about what happened.
Yeah, it's usually like 5 minutes, or I know you also give her the decision, like once she's calmed down after that 5 minutes, then she can decide to come down and we can talk about why we went upstairs and why there was a separation. And if she doesn't get it right, then she has to go back upstairs and rethink what happened. So I think that's a good thing.
Right. And that helps a child learn how to regulate their emotions, but
Mm-hmm.
by giving them, sometimes that was a technique we've used sometimes, where it's like, okay, you can come out of your room when you stop crying and yelling and screaming enough to where we can come and talk about it, and come down and we'll have a talk. So you give them that ability to determine when they come out of their room. Didn't use that all the time, because there's a lot of times I needed a timeout as well, because usually when they're getting so frustrated, I'm getting frustrated too, and I need to feel my emotions come back down so I can have a calm, loving talk afterwards. And so most of the time I would have me keep the control of when they could come out of their room, but there definitely been plenty of times where I feel like I'm calm, I don't need a timeout, and I'll put my child in charge of saying, when you stop crying and screaming, you can come down out of your room and we'll have a talk about this.
Yeah. And another thing for us is we don't have technology or, a running TV. We don't have any of that stuff in the room. But yeah, there are some toys. But I think mostly because we know our child, she wants to be with us. And to be apart from us is like, she doesn't like it.
Yeah, and
She does not like it. She does like to be in her room and play in her room, but that's when things are great. But if it's a time where we're all separated, she doesn't like that at all. She's like, I want to be with you. I'm missing out being with the family. Like, she really wants to be with us.
right. And as for me, I don't really mind if she plays with her toys. My whole point is for her to be able to calm down her emotions, get out of an overstimulated situation, to break up this crazy cycle that we got going on, reset. So now we can talk about what happened. So I don't have any problem with her playing with whatever's going on if that helps her calm down and regulate her emotions. I mean, part of maturity is emotional maturity and learning how to regulate one's emotions. So that's part of what we're trying to do as parents as well, is that we can't just give voice to our emotions to just, if I feel like flying off the handle at somebody, I just fly off the handle. That's not very productive, and usually
Right.
makes the situation worse, because it makes the other person fly off the handle at you, and now we're
Right.
stirring up things. So we definitely need to teach our child not to throw a fit in the grocery store, because if we don't, they may still do that as a teenager. Part of our job is to teach that emotional regulation. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be sad when you're sad. It's okay to be frustrated in a frustrated situation. But there's a way that we voice those frustrations, and it needs to be in a socially appropriate way that other people can also receive and not yell back at you.
Yeah.
And so
I think
that's an
it's
important
a lot
part.
of maturity too, like to grow in maturity in that, and making sure that we're teaching those techniques as well. So timeouts are good.
Yes, and back to the thing. I still there's I think a minority view. I hope it's a minority view. I just think it's a strange view of parenting to not have timeouts because they don't like that isolation. Man, I just found it worked so well, and it actually created a very loving disciplinary moment at the end where we could just talk it out and then end with an apology and forgiveness and hugs and kisses and restoring relationships that were disrupted from somebody hitting somebody, a child hitting another child. And it's like, go apologize to your brother for hitting your brother. Just it helps reset everything. But I know there's a technique out there, kind of an intermediary one, of what's called a time in, where instead of sending a child to a time out, being isolated, will prevent that isolation and give a time in, either sitting on the stairs in your presence, or even so much as like holding on to the child. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I don't like the
I'm
idea of holding on to your child, because now
No.
you're using your embrace as a disciplinary method that they're trying to squirm away from, that they don't like. And it's like, no, all my touches and embraces are going to
Should
be
be filled with love.
filled with love. And that's what
Right.
I want to associate my embraces with, is love. And so I don't want to use an embrace in any way as a disciplinary method.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of like, when you're trying to wrestle someone or they've done something like a criminal or something, you're grabbing onto them really tightly, like a straitjacket or something. And I don't really flow with that, and I don't really want to even be part of that. I don't think time in is something that has been useful for us. I don't think we've ever used that. Like,
Mm-mm.
if we're in the kitchen and then she's on the couch or something like that, it's just best just to go upstairs and let's just have a little bit of a break. But the time in thing and embracing a child when they're not behaving appropriately is just something that is not in my wheelhouse.
Right. And and like you were saying, as far as like the time in the same room, that never worked for us either, because they're still in the same stimulating environment.
And they're
And
still
they're still wanting to
talking.
talk to us, and we're still in an argument going on
Right.
when they're
It's just not
in our
working.
presence. We need in order to disengage from this total crazy cycle that's going
Mhm.
on, it needs to be a complete separation from that. And
Mhm.
it does not hurt a child to
Mhm.
isolate them for that brief
Right.
amount of time, and it actually helps. I mean, which is better, being in your presence, yelling and arguing at each other and treating each other horribly, or let's reset, let's go into separate rooms and let it calm down, and then let's have a loving conversation
Mhm.
about what just happened. And I think that's a great technique even for adults. If we get in an argument, one of the best things we can do is like, okay, this we kind of got on a little bit of a crazy cycle right here. Let's press pause, time out. Maybe I go for a walk. Maybe you go for a walk, or maybe we just decide to pick up this conversation the next morning after we've
Yeah.
slept on it, because this
Yeah, I'm not going to come give you a bear hug. Tell me, make sure that
no,
we're making up right now. No, it's
so,
not.
sometimes we need a timeout from an
Yeah.
overstimulated situation or a conversation that just went off the rails.
Right.
And if it's gone off the rails, don't continue off the rails. Just
Mhm.
press pause. We're going to pick this up tomorrow, start again, and maybe get off on a better foot. And
Yeah.
we don't want to ignore the conversation if it was an important issue that we need to talk about.
Right.
If you don't press pause permanently, because then the other person's going to be like, oh, well, they just escaped from this, and
Mhm.
I got to keep them here. We'll never discuss it. If we're going to discuss it at all, we got to have a bad conversation. But
Right.
so we don't want that. What we want is to be able to press pause, and we know the other person is going to revisit it the
Mhm.
next day in a calm way. We're going to sit down, hold hands, apologize for how the other conversation went, and start over, reset. And that's how timeouts can work for adults. It can work for teenagers. It can work for all ages, to just help reset some kind of conversation or interaction that went crazy, that went off the rails. So it can be a very helpful technique, and it gives power to your words when you ask a child to do something, that if they know the next step might be go to your room.
Right.
It's you got to have a consequence when your words are ignored. And the beauty of it is your words start to mean something, and now you can just direct a child through your words. And that's beauty. That's the best part of parenting, when you can just say, will you please do
Mhm.
such and such, and they go, yes, I will.
Yeah, and so Michael, I want to also bring up this timeout, but with counting. Like counting down, because when we started the podcast at the very beginning, I counted down, and there's this thing about counting down, and you give, I don't know, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. So let's talk about that, because I could say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the child's like not moving until I say 1, and the next thing you know, they are right there doing what they are supposed to do. And I feel like that conditions the heart not to listen until the very last minute, because they're like, okay, well, I'll just not pay attention to my mom or my dad until the very last minute, and then I'll take action just so that I don't get in trouble. And I think that is just for us, we've never used that technique. And I don't want to use it because I want my child to listen to me the first time versus me having to count down. And we see that a lot. We see that when we're at parks or wherever we are. You hear a parent, okay, 3, 2, what? And then the kid at like 1 is like chasing after the mom because, or sometimes they don't listen. Okay, instead of 3, I'm going to give you 7, 7, 6, and it's like they do nothing.
Right. And just observing that myself, that's one of the rules we set out from the very beginning
Yeah.
of parenthood with us. It's like we're on the same we're on the
Same page.
same page. We're on the same page here, right? Where we don't want to do countdowns, because just observing other parents, like, I don't want to have to count down every time I ask my child to do something.
Right.
Because that's what I would see. It's like a child that would just completely ignore your words until you did a countdown. So what would you have to do? Just like every time you'd have to count down. And we'd be over at relative's house with a small child, and it's like every command or direction they gave to a child, they had to do a countdown. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I want to be able to just say for them to do it, and they just do it. And how do you do that? Well, the reason the child's obeying the countdown is because the parent is using the countdown to reinforce within the parent, okay, I'm done like debating this, and now I've come to the determination you will do this now, and if you don't, there's going to be a consequence. And the way I tell you that is a countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2. So everybody's rallied to go, oh, and the parent gives the consequence. So now the child listens to the countdown. Well, I just want to do the same thing with my words, that I want to teach a child that when I ask them very politely to do something, they do that. And the way I teach them to do that is if they disobey that very polite request, there's a consequence. There's not this delay until there's a countdown. And there's a principle in parenting called delayed obedience is disobedience.
Yes.
So you don't want to reinforce delayed obedience. You always want to teach immediacy. I ask a child to do something, they do it. And you want to be able to just ask politely, will you please put this up? Will you please take out the trash? And they just do it. That's what you're going for. That creates that peaceful home that we're going for. Proverbs 29:7 that says, discipline your children and they will give you peace and delight your soul.
Yeah, and it makes me think of Exodus 20 and Ephesians, where it says, honor your mother and your father and you'll have a long life. Like, your life is long. It's a promise. And so to be obedient to your parents, that is life, because you're learning to be obedient to your parents so that you can be obedient to other authorities, maybe your boss down the road when you become an adult. Like, we want to raise up responsible biblical children who listen, who are obedient and people of God who, aren't constantly stiff arming at every turn. I mean, that's just really not good. I mean, you don't want a child to disobey you. Are they going to disobey authority like police? Are they going to disobey if there's some major situation? Or disobey their bosses when they have jobs? They're going to end up losing jobs. I mean, it's our job as parents to teach that when I speak, I'm not doing it because I don't love you or because I don't want you to have this or that. I'm doing it because it's good for your heart. It's good for your soul. And that is the responsibility of the parent. God has given us that charge. Take care of your children. Teach them diligently, by the way, all the time. And don't delay doing it. Like what Michael was saying is, like, you'll have peace. The parents will have peace. And there are other scriptures that talk about that it brings sorrow to the parent's heart when the child is just a disobedient, not controlled person as they grow up, and they've strayed away from the gospel and they've strayed away from their parents. And that brings sorrow, that brings distress and anxiousness of, like, what have I done to my child? And so we have to be prayerful about these things. But I know for us, we do not do the counting down. It's just not something that we want to do, because we want to be able to make sure that our words are firm and our words mean something. So when we say it, do it. Is it perfect? No. But, we will have consequences if those things are not done. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about this specific discipline in this podcast around counting down and also just the timeouts, because it's important for us to understand what tools we have available. But we all have to go back to what God's word says. What does God's word tell us to do as parents? And that is discipline our children. We are to discipline them. We're to teach them who he is so that they can understand the authority of God. If they understand the authority of God, they'll understand the authority of the parents. And this is something that we just have to keep pressing forward, remaining steadfast, not giving up. Don't do 15-second countdowns and things like that. These are things that we want to be strong and standing steadfast on what we say, because we want to honor God in our families, and we want our children to understand and honor him as well. So we hope that you found this podcast helpful. Give us a thumbs up so that this could go out to many families. We want to share as much as we can with as many people as we can, the love of Jesus in our families. And remember, we do have Bible studies available at marriagemaniaministry.com. We have Bible studies for husbands and wives, covering the role of a biblical husband, and the helper, the role of a biblical wife. So check those out. It really helps our ministry. We're so thankful we're able to talk about these disciplinary techniques, and just follow along as we continue to talk about these in a series. So thank you for being here. Until next time.
God bless.